I'm Giuseppe Capana and I'm the Product Safety Engineer for Electrical Safety First. Today we're going to talk about extension leads and cable reels and some of the dangers with these items. If you've got lots of products to plug in, make sure you plug them into separate socket outlets. Now that doesn't mean plugging one socket outlet into there and another one into there, because this is the same socket outlet. So both extension leads are plugged into the same socket outlet. Now, if you've got loads of low power appliances, it's probably not such a big problem. However, if you have high powered appliances, things like we're talking about washing machines, heaters, we're talking about dishwashers, these sort of large appliances, if you plug lots of these products into the same extension lead and then they're plugged into the same socket outlet, you will overload this socket outlet. The other thing not to do is daisy chaining. Now, daisy chaining, what we're talking about is plugging one extension lead into another extension lead. We've all done that. And it means that all the current from these two extension leads is all being drained through this one socket outlet. And there's a real risk that you will overload the socket outlet if you have high powered appliances plugged in. Each extension lead will have a plug fitted, and that plug will have a fuse. That fuse is your overcurrent protection for your extension lead. Now, if you see an extension lead that says surge protected, surge protection does not protect you against overload. It only protects you against an overvoltage for something such as a lightning strike. It's also important to make sure that if you've got surge protected extension leads, that you've bought them from reputable retailers, because there are very strict requirements for surge protection, and if your extension lead does not meet those requirements, it could catch fire. Here I'm going to give you an example of what it looks like if you've overloaded your extension lead. So here's one that we found, and you can see that the plug has overheated. You can see this yellowing here of the plug. That's where the fuse has overheated, and you can see also that it's cracked, and you can see here where it was just about to catch fire. So that's why it's very important. Do not daisy chain your extension leads and do not overload them with large appliances. So let's talk a little bit about adapters. If you do need to extend the number of socket outlets you've got on your fixed socket outlet, the best way to do it is use a extension lead which has a cable and a number of socket outlets, or you can use one of these block adapters. The block adapters will either have 3 or 2 outlets on there. If it's got 2 outlets on there, it may not need a fuse. So if you see one that's got 2 outlets, doesn't have a fuse, that's fine. If it's got 3 outlets or more, it is a requirement that it's fitted with a fuse to make sure that it doesn't overload. You may have seen these type of products. These are called T-bar adapters. Now, from June 2026, there are new requirements. These type of products will only be allowed to have 2 socket outlets, and they will need to be equally spaced across the center bar. If you find one that has 3 socket outlets or more socket outlets, it will not meet the standards from June 2026. So if you come across one of these type of products with these type of socket outlets called universal socket outlets, stay well away, because these do not meet any standards in the UK and are quite often very dangerous. In an investigation that we did, we found issues with earthing, we found issues with, like you can see here, I can actually see the live parts through the shutter. So it's got shutters, but the shutters are not effective. This one here also has USB ports, and if it's got USB ports, if it hasn't been tested to the standards. It's quite likely that there may be issues with the isolation between the mains and the output that you can touch, which means that you could get an electric shock from one of these items. So any item that's fitted with one of these universal socket outlets, make sure you stay well away. Okay, so let's talk about cable reels and use of socket outlets outside. So cable reels, you've all seen these type of products. Now, if you buy a new one of these products, most likely it will be fitted with a thermal cutout. So that's a button and it'll trip if the item overheats. If you have an older one of these, you may find that it does not have one of these thermal cutouts, which may mean that if you overload the cable reel, it may overheat and catch fire, and we'll do a demonstration of that shortly. We're also going to talk about use of plugs and sockets outside. If you've got a standard extension lead, it's important that you don't use that outside, because if it gets wet, there's an increased risk of electric shock. If you're using an extension lead outside, make sure you plug it into one of these properly designed external socket outlets. This one is rated IP66, which means it's suitable for use even with water jets. And you will see that when you plug into it with your extension lead, and it encloses the plug and then closes up, and that's perfectly waterproof. If you've got one of these type of extension leads and you want to use it outside, if you use it outside as it is, there's a high risk of electric shock. Make sure you enclose it in a properly designed IP rated enclosure. It will look a little bit like one of these socket outlets, but be much larger. There are lots of resources and information on our website at electricalsafetyfirst.org.uk. On that website, you will also find our socket overload calculator, which allows you to work out what types of items you can plug in and whether it will overload your extension lead. Right, so we're going to talk a little bit now about overloading of cable reels. So here we have a cable reel, and you can see it looks a little bit messy, but because it's been completely unwound. And that is really important if you're using one of these type of products with a high current appliance, like for example, a fan heater. And we're going to do a demonstration now just to show you why it's so important. So let's switch on. So you can see we're using a thermal camera on this cable reel. The wire is completely unwound, and you can tell, look, compared to my hand, how hot the cable reel is. It's cool, it's running at about 15, 16 degrees, and it's running a 2 kilowatt heater. So that's fine. That can run all day long, no issues. So you can see from the markings of this extension lead that when it's unwound, its rating is 13 amps. You can see that here. 13 amps unwound. That will allow you to run a product like this. Right? However, once it's wound up, its maximum rating is now reduced to 5 amps. And the reason for that is a cable's current rating is down to its ability to dissipate heat. When you have a cable reel that's all coiled up, the heat can't get out and it just gets hotter and hotter. And if it didn't have a thermal cutout, it would continue to get hot until the cable melted and then possibly caught fire. Okay, so here we have the same cable reel with the same load, but this time it's coiled up. And you can see that the wire now has got very hot and it's reaching almost 60 degrees. So if we left this running with this load, with it all wound up, eventually this thermal cutout would trip to tell you that the cable is overheating. If you had an older type of cable reel which didn't have a thermal cutout, what would actually happen was the cable would get hotter and hotter until it melted, and then it would either short out and blow the fuse, or in some cases it could catch fire. go to our website and use the overload calculator to make sure that you're not overloading your extension leads.